Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. What's the point of beauty? What's the point of art? Questions I've asked myself for decades, really, honestly. And I had absolutely no idea that Maryam Eisler's entire project is tied up in those questions until today. And this is a woman who I've known for 10 years and admired and enjoyed her patronage of the arts, her ability to create beautiful photographs, her generosity, everything, right? But I didn't know until this moment that what she's really seeking is to kind of help us all look at beauty and feel awe. And that's it, whether it's in her own work or through her own work or through looking at and celebrating other artists. And this makes her extraordinary. This makes her just epic and awesome. And hopefully you'll know exactly what I mean when you listen to our conversation, but also when you look at her work. But hi, Maryam Eisler.
Hello, Carrie Scott.
I have questions.
Go on.
I have lots of questions.
I'm all yours.
The easiest thing for me, I think, to do is to start with the image that got us talking, right? The first image I saw of yours was this woman crouched.
Yes.
And she wasn't crouched in like fear, she was crouched. There was something super powerful about her. And she had this like giant expanse above her. And I remember looking at it and then looking at it again and then being like, right, okay, like who is this photographer? So who is this photographer? And for you, is that image looking, right, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, maybe?
10
years ago.
Yes.
Does that image for you still hold the weight that it does for me?
It does, because as you know, the crux of my work till now has always been about the sublime feminine. And for me, that sort of fetal position, but also, really exemplifies on so many levels strength, the essence of woman with a capital W, which is really, has taken so much of my practice till today. Suspended, at the same time, extremely powerful, extremely strong, but also light. Light in terms of weight, but also light in terms of light, because as you can recall, you can see all these specks of these particles, which are actually dust, but you wouldn't know it unless you knew it. But it's more woman at the center of the universe. These specks almost being, planets and stars, and her just taking this very central role in our universe, effectively.
How did that image even come to be? Like naked woman, black and white, in a desert space.
It was actually in the Beau-de-Provence in south of France. There are bauxite quarries, which are abandoned. It's a site which has been always very interesting to me because Testament d'Orphée, the film, was filmed in those specific quarries. And it's something that goes back to my youth. Growing up in France, the whole French culture of the visual culture, film, music, etc. And I always had this obsession about going there. And so when I did, it almost threw me back to the origins of creation, effectively. And then made me think about Eve. Eve, who have sought all over the world. As you know, I'm incredibly attracted to very barren nature, almost hostile nature, the desert, these abandoned spaces, but where life can happen, where Eve can exist. And so I shot this. It was fluke, as normally, any kind of photograph generally happens without too much thinking. And it was end of day. We were in this quarry, and I just saw a slight slither of light going through a crack. And it just created an automatic sort of natural platform. And I asked the dancer who I was working with, she was a wonderful Dutch dancer, beautiful, body, muscular dynamics. I said, would you take a pose on this natural platform? And as she sat, the light hit her. And there was, obviously all the dust from the quarry. And I just said, grab the dust. And
she threw it up.
She threw it up in the air. And so I caught the moment where she went back into that fetal position, and all these stars, it's almost like the sparkling wonder around her descended on her body.
Huh. So this raises several points that actually aren't even on my sheet. One of the things that I think makes your work so exciting is you pull in multiple references, right? And you're pulling from lots of different things. Half the time I'm like, yes, Maryam. And then I'm over here being like, what was she talking about? What was that obscure Iranian reference or film? Like your knowledge of film is second to none. But that you start with those, and then you're kind of okay with letting chance take over.
Yes. I'm a great believer in, when it comes to the visual, capturing that split second. It's not -1, it's not +1, it's the second. And you're either lucky enough, actually luck I think comes into play, to catch it, or you just don't. And I'm a very non-technical photographer. Of course I know the basics of photography and the technicality of a camera, but I'm much more intuitive, in the way that I capture a moment. It's more about capturing a sentiment. It's more about capturing a feeling. Generally speaking, probably my inner psyche working, which I then try to project eventually into the digital form and then eventually onto a piece of paper. Yes, it's spontaneous. I move a lot. I'm not a static photographer. I have the subject, and I literally have this sort of rhythmic song and dance around the subject. It's quite physical, in fact, when I look back at, how I take a shot. A lot of physicality going up and down, left and right, moving, a lot of, capturing from below, because especially when it comes to the sublime feminine, I like to show woman from a very, powerful perspective. So I do tend to sort of go in my tummy and capturing from below. So this shot, actually, I was in the quarry. I was like literally white with powder because I was lying on the ground and she was on a pedestal.
Because you want to lift her up as your subject?
I want to lift her up. I want to lift this energy. But I also want, it's not so much about the subject either, is I want the energy of the observer. I want the energy of my audience to be lifted at the same time, male or female. I'm not doing this for women. I'm doing this for humanity. And that's kind of how I approach the majority of my photography, whether it's focused on the human figure or whether it's focused on, powerful landscapes or whatever else I, tend to look into.
All right, well, you've just opened it up. We're going to have to talk about the female gaze.
Yes.
Because you've just done it, right?
Yes.
What is your take on there being a female gaze?
I think that, again, if I go back to the topic of woman, I have captured woman in all her might, in all types of perspective settings, built around stories, in open, wild, desert, big nature, big sky, the American West, New Mexico, so where really her power is equal to the power of nature. So there's those types of, tensions that I work with in big nature. But I've also captured women in interiors, around stories.
Feet on tables.
Feet on tables.
Dirty feet.
Dirty feet
on tables.
Stories of, the next day, what happened the night before, making the audience wonder, but always in a very powerful way. It's never I believe in, showing sensuality in all its might. I'm not scared of sexuality, but it's never done in that hard, harsh kind of way that potentially a male gaze can have on a woman. I embrace all of that and I never stay shy of it, but I do think that there are ways of showing it where you just make this being all powerful, all beautiful. I like to focus, I call it body architecture. So it's really, even if there's a nude involved, it's never nude in that sort of, here I am in the nude. It's more about creating a sculpture, creating beauty, showing off the forms and the way the light hits these forms and these lines. So effectively, the body becomes a beautiful sculpture filled with energy, filled with effervescence and life and possibility and potential. It goes beyond the physicality of this figure. It's also soulfulness. I would like you to feel good and feel soulful and introspective when you see an image.
And your settings, they're always symbolic, right? Like deserts, crazy, beautiful architecture, American diners, ranches.
Yes.
How do you go about picking those things? Because they are so vast.
Yes.
I mean, anchored by human and the figure
Yes.
and anchored. That's something I think I see throughout your work. But how do you go about picking all these crazy...
I'm a bit crazy. I'm very spontaneous. I'm incredibly spontaneous. I get obsessed by certain things. There was a moment where I obsessed with the journals of Edward Weston, for instance, and I started reading them, and I got obsessed about this love affair that he had with Tina Modotti, and I literally had to go to Carmel. I had to find his grandson, Kim, which I did. Eventually ended up in his home, in his lab, in his dark room, and revisited this love story between Tina and Edward, when she took him to Mexico in the 1920s, taken by total revolutionary fervor. And so I went, it took me like 2 months between like reading the journals and being in his home, photographing the figure from a female gaze, imagining, this was actually a very interesting one because I was trying to see what he may have felt about her in the way that he may have photographed her. But when the results of these photographs came out, a lot of people said, no, this is not a male gaze onto the woman that he loves or is passionate about. This is actually a female gaze onto the male gaze looking at the love of his life. Other situations, this piece here that we have behind us, I was just in the Hamptons last summer, and I've pretty much very obsessed with the American West. I think I have this relationship. I often say maybe in another life, I may have been from that part of the world. I'm always intrigued by native ideology, philosophy, the land. I'm incredibly attracted to that part of the world. And when I am there, I'm feeling at my most calm, at my most soulful place, and I can't explain it. Sometimes in life, you can't explain everything. So you just have to let go and let your intuition take over. So I've done a lot of work, around Ghost Ranch, around Jojo O'Keeffe's, where she had her studio in place, always obsessed with her power. When I think that, she moved to that part of the world during the period that she did. Alone in that vastness. She left her husband back in New York, and it just made sense. When you're walking that trail to her house, you're pretty much engulfed by this nature, by this powerful, these dotted clouds that you actually find in most of her paintings. I saw them, I experienced them, I was taken by them, I understood her. And so all these matters, all these elements come into play, and I ended up going back there and doing a whole shoot there. One of the first shoots actually that I did, and which was shown in London back 10 years ago, exactly. And then other things are, during lockdown, for instance, as you know, because we worked together on a wonderful series that was shot at Leighton House, I was reminiscing of my childhood, of Iran. And I was thinking, what a beautiful country I still have, but the romanticism and the beauty of my own youth until the age of 10 when I left, and I never went back, as you know, since. And I started thinking about the visual and about all of, for instance, Henry Clark's photographs that he had taken in Iran in the 70s with the great models of the time, you know, the Marisa Berenson and wonderful, you know, models of that period. And so I thought, oh my God, like I wish I could recreate this, you know, somewhere in the solitude of confinement. I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, we have Leighton House, you know, which is an ode to this Orientalist Lord Leighton with this beautiful Moroccan courtyard. And I just picked up the phone, you know, to the council here in Kensington and said, you know, is there any chance of having access? And they said yes. And I have no idea why they said yes, but they said yes. So I went in there and it was just, you know, it was liberating because we're in the middle of COVID. It was a place of possibility, of creation. It was fairy tale. And then I had Baudelaire in my head, you know, poems by Baudelaire. I had poems by Hafez and Sadi, you know, lines that were coming in. So I had this, you know, cross-cultural situation of my own background, translating words and poetry into the visual. And then we developed Once Upon a Turquoise Past together, as you know, and that was shown just out of COVID. So what I'm trying to say is I'm very reactive. I'm very spontaneous, and I think of something and then it just has to happen. And it's like it's literally like a dog that can't let go of a bone. I can't let go until it's done.
But I think, and I'd be curious to know if you agree with me, but I think during lockdown, you realized how essential art making was for you.
Yes.
And you were like, okay, this is all.
Headspace.
Yeah. And part of it, I think, was the book, which is here, The Confined Artists, right? Yeah. So you interviewed
165 artists out of boredom.
Not out of boredom. I think you were trying to work out how would you survive this lockdown, this confinement.
Absolutely.
And then I think when you did the project with Leighton House, and wasn't there like a ballerina?
Yes.
Where you got
absolutely.
Police came?
Absolutely. We were in Piccadilly at midnight in the middle of confinement, and I got a hold of a friend of mine, Mayway, who's a wonderful stylist. And she said, you know, I have this wonderful ballerina, and she works with Matthew Bourne's company. And, you know, we're all sitting here idle, not creating, we're bored, we're inactive, you know, we're having, you know, mental issues, all of us, all these creative people, right? And I said, well, come on, let's get our act together. Let's get a group together and go to Piccadilly and just take over St. James's at night. And we did it. We were like completely crazy. We did it. And so we arrived, not a human in sight. And the entire St. James to us, and this wonderful ballerina, Prima, started twirling and whirling all throughout St. James and flying, you know, just exploding with energy and possibility. And I still have goosebumps thinking about it, genuinely speaking, because it just gave us such a verve for life. Or it gave us also, you know, this reminder of what life is, what humanity is, and how much we need creation, how much we need color. She was wearing this beautiful red, you know, creation by Mayway. And we went on for about an hour until the police showed up. And I said, you know, I'm not cracking any, we're not breaking any rules here. You know, we're allowed to do this. And they were very adamant, you better pack up, we're going to take you in. I was like, okay. So, but by then we had captured everything we needed to capture. And it was just a beautiful moment. There are these moments during confinement, during that COVID period where they will forever be etched in my soul, and as a total reminder of what we are as humans and what we need as humans and how much it matters to feel. And for me, art is feeling. I mean, punto, no other definition. It's about feeling.
So then do you think I'm right? Was that a moment where you said, oh, no, actually, this is essential. I'm all in.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Because you came to photography a bit later.
I did and I didn't. I did and I didn't. My college applications, all of them to the US, actually had photography as my main essay.
No.
Yeah. And it was the love of photography. In fact, for many, many years, my father, who was an amateur photographer, always joked with me. And he always said, you know, whatever happened to this love of photography? And I said, well, Dad, a revolution happened. You know, I'm a child of a revolution. Revolution took place in 79. We left under very difficult circumstances. I couldn't really allow myself to pursue the arts. I, you know, sort of had it in my head that we lost everything. Mm-hmm. We lost our country. I lost my roots. I never lost my heritage, cultural heritage. That's, you know, forever ingrained in my DNA and in my soul. But I couldn't allow myself to just go after the arts. You know, I thought that I need to be a banker, or I need to be a lawyer, or I need to put bread on the table. And I did that. You know, I went to business school, as you know. I then worked in banking for a couple of years. Mistake. I worked in marketing with L'Oreal and Estée Lauder, which was far better because I really enjoyed the creative side of things. And in fact, it was during those 10 years with these cosmetics companies where I developed an eye for the visual and, you know, through advertisement and commercials and woman, the beauty of woman, but it was very surface, right? What I tried to do later on in my current last 10 years is get inside the soul of a woman as well. So,
I think that you, there's this, it's extraordinary, right? And if you look at where we are in the world currently, we don't have people who think art is essential leading countries.
Yeah.
We don't have patrons of the art. And it feels to me like your entire project, whether it is supporting artists with confined artists, whether it's with any of, we don't have them out, but any of the studio books you did, whether it's with your own work, that there's this like, hang on everybody, we cannot forget how much culture matters. And I think it probably does stem from losing what you lost so early on.
I think we no longer live in a time or a period where you have to be defined, you know, in the arts. And I think it all bounces off of each other. There's a continuous dialogue between all parts of me, of I. I can only speak for myself, but I almost need it. I'm an artist, first and foremost, and I feel incredibly privileged to have been given this opportunity 10 years ago, really, for the first time, when a gallery trusted in my work and actually decided to show. But as you were saying to me, and you're 100% right, prior to that, I've been involved in the arts on so many levels, whether it's in the making of books, and frankly, those 5-6 books, a lot focused on artists and their studios. But by the way, I'm making a book on artists. I'm interviewing artists, photographing them on some occasions or with other colleague photographers. But I'm also learning. I'm educating myself on the job. It's not just, you know, it's a very selfish exercise because,
I know,
right? Because I didn't study it. I studied political science in my undergrad. I didn't allow myself to study the arts, as I said. So this is a very selfish way of learning on the job, but really by digging into it. When you interview an artist, you really get into it. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the lines, I think probably 700, 800, maybe 900 studios later, after all these books that we made collaboratively, so it's been I promise you, over a period of about 10 years. Yeah, all over, from the US to, you know, the Middle East, Asia, the UK. Somewhere along the lines, all this information gets absorbed by your own brain, and then you have an output that comes out, in my case, in a creative way. So I am here to also thank all these wonderful people who've given me their time, their mind, their studios, their stories, their lessons, and all of that. I've also been involved, as you know, with some museums. I chaired the acquisition committee for the Tate for 10 years for the Middle East. And that was my way of giving back to a region that deserves it, because sadly, mediatically speaking, the whole region has sadly suffered a lot of negative, you know, image making in a sense. But what and I can only speak about Iran in particular, as you know, we had a revolution about 40, 45 years ago. But let's not forget that there's 3,000 years of true culture embedded in this country prior to this. This is a mere blip of negativity. We have contributed so much to world culture, whether it's in garden design, architecture, poetry, miniatures. And I don't forget that. That's part of me. It's part of who I am. So I kind of feel I owe it to my own country, to my own people, not to the government, to give back to the culture of where I come from, really. And that's, you know, that's museum side. And then, you know, I've always loved getting involved with artist residencies, supporting artists in whatever way I can by actually selling my own work, you know, and dedicating 100% of the revenues of my own work back to other artists. So it's been a sort of a soup along the way, you know, for the last, I would say, 20 to 25 years, which has taken its own form as we've gone along. But thankfully, I feel incredibly privileged that for the last 10 years, I've really managed to finally focus on really what matters to me, which is photography, my own photography. I live it, I breathe it, I dream it, I eat it, and I'm constantly onto the next project, the next idea.
I mean, I can confirm that that's true for the people at home.
Yeah.
You are constantly on the old, what do we do? What's happening next?
Midnight, 2 o'clock, 1 a.m.
That's good. But I think it is a new model, as you say. I think that people, and it's so easy to box us into roles and who we are.
Yeah.
But I think that people are so quick to say, oh, Maryam's the collector, or Maryam's the artist. And part of, it's
a puzzle.
It's the same project.
It's a puzzle. It all feeds off of each other.
Exactly. And that maybe it's a new thing.
Way of being.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, which I'm okay with.
Which is good. Why should we be boxed? Why should we define ourselves?
Mm-mm.
You know, why the need to define, really?
Because it helps people understand.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that.
But we don't need to do that.
No,
yeah.
Exactly. Not personally.
Exactly.
Right? What has been what's the most irritating thing about being a photographer? Like when people see the work and maybe they say, why are you shooting women nude all the time, Maryam? Or what's with the sexy shot of the cowboy? I'm trying to think through like, what's irritating?
No, the classic, one of the classic, I was doing a talk once about 5-6 years ago. I won't mention who, but it was in the context of a very serious audience. And the person who was interviewing me said, you know, I don't understand how you allow yourself as an Iranian woman to actually shoot the figurative woman, sometimes nude. And I was so irate. I really was so irate because that automatically puts you in a box. You know, it has annotations and correlations with this stereotypical, you know, attitude and definition of what you need to be as a woman. On top of it, a Persian woman. And in fact, look at what's happened in Iran, you know, since October 22, the rise, the voice that's come to contest and to fight for freedom has come from women. Hasn't come from anyone, you know, the rest has followed, but it was women who are out there first and foremost. And they used art, by the way. So art has come in, you know, I mean, it's incredible how much artistic endeavor has backed up women's plight in Iran since this resurgence and cry for freedom, for instance. So that really made me irate. That question really just threw me off. And I kind of backlashed, and I don't think he's spoken to me since.
But that gets back to like, don't pigeonhole me.
Don't pigeonhole me.
I'm not some expectation.
And by the way, I'm not an Iranian artist. I'm not, you know, a photographer. I'm just a human who happens to love art, and I create art, and I support art, and I love art, and I can't live without art. Simple as that, really.
So good. Okay. Now that you just gave me that perfect soundbite, what about West West?
Yes.
How did, so this is your latest project.
Yes.
It's a bit of a departure.
Yes.
As in there aren't as many figures. There's still the figurative, but it's not the center.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, first of all, going back to your last question of style, I do move and I do change styles a little bit. I mean, I have a core style, which I think you've picked up on, or certainly a core thematic. But I also believe that you should allow yourself as an artist to explore new styles and not just be stuck in your way of doing something that sells commercially. Where's the spontaneity? Where's the creativity? Where's the new possibility of moving away from a certain thing that works onto perhaps something that may or may not work? But it's about taking risks, and it's about believing in this new choice, new possibility, right? So West is exactly that. This has been the most spontaneous, the most organic project that I've ever worked on. By pure fluke, about a year and a half ago, I was sitting at home and my name drops in a WhatsApp group chat. And it was a reunion a high school reunion from Paris days, where I grew up for about 7 years. And a random number asks me, "Hey, Maryam, do you remember me?" And I said, "Well, you're a number. Who are you?" And he said, "It's Alexi." And I said, "Oh my goodness, Alexi Ribou." And he goes, "Yes." And we just realized after, by the way, that there were 120 people on this chat. So we're having this like one-on-one conversation. I said, "Of course, you were my best friend in high school. How can I forget you?" So then, of course, we get off chat. And it turns out that he lives in Paris, not too far. Last time we saw each other was literally 1989. No, not even, 1985. And he's a photographer. And so we met up, of course, naturally. He was my best buddy. So we met up and we explored conversations, thematics of what interests him, what he's done, where he's worked, what he's done, what I have done. And we both discovered that we both love the American West. So very, very spontaneously and organically, it was just automatic. We looked at each other, we said, should we try this? Should we just go out there and be crazy, like crazy teenagers, the way we used to be? And that's what we did. It took about, I don't know, maybe 8 weeks of a little bit of preparation of where we would like to go, what types of subjects we would like to explore. We have very different interests, which is nice. He likes the margins and I like the sort of kind of the everyday, as you said, when you look at the body of work, I'm very also focused on people. I met the human figure, takes a role. But anyway, we took off. We took off for about, 3 weeks or so, a little more than 3 weeks on the road. And we started in Houston, ended up in El Paso. Then we went up to Marfa, then New Mexico, other parts of New Mexico, Santa Fe, Taos, Utah, Arizona, and covered so many subjects. And we can talk about that.
But there are a couple of things that are extraordinary about this.
Yeah.
Not least of all, photographers are lone wolves.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They are out with their camera doing their thing, and collaboration is not really known.
No.
Right? It's not a thing.
No.
So that's a bit weird. And also, though, that you did this together, but actually you were kind of lone wolves. You didn't share images with one another.
No.
This wasn't a like, oh, let's go to that location and shoot that thing.
No.
You guys just kind of would stop the car and take the shot and never show each other what you were doing.
Never.
So I have like many questions here.
Yeah.
One is, what did that feel like? Like, was it, to me, I think that would give me anxiety.
Well, actually, to me, I can only speak for myself from my perspective, because I know that Alexi does this a lot. Like, he does this kind of, lone travel to crazy places. It's part of his practice. That's what he's been doing all along. And he just came back from Panama, as you know, so doing exactly that. With me, it's always a little bit more prepared. I always have, I have to pre-book my dancers. I have to have makeup. I need to have a space and place. So it was really pushing my comfort zone in a sense, because I'd never done this kind of thing before, where I'm just kind of let out there, here, shoot what? I'll never forget the first day in El Paso. I'm like walking by his side, camera in hand, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm just following you to see." He's like, "No, you can't. Like literally,
Bye.
no way. You go right, I go left, and that's it. And so those first 48 hours were incredibly uncomfortable, but I was somehow secretly enjoying it, trying to capture visuals that I had never been playing around with. And so it took a little while, but once you get, accustomed to the situation, then you fall into it. And then I think the thing that really made it work for me was the expanse of space and place, separated from the urban, away from friends, family, children, all of that, purely concentrated on the essence of photography and capturing, feeling the environment that I was working. It was almost meditative. It's the only way I can explain it to you. It was a moment, it was almost like going for 3 weeks to a spa, mental spa, where you had the luxury of time to create, time to think a lot, and time to walk. It was very physical, time to take in all this sky and dust and terrain and land and people, but people who really have almost nothing in common with you, really, except for their humanity. And that's the most powerful thing. That's when you realize, actually, we all have so much in common, and that we should just stop faffing around about these, cultural, tensions and breakups. And we're all human. We have 2 eyes, 2 cheeks, a mouth. And it's just about creating that rapport. It's about finding that possibility, that way of approaching a human and finding that common point. And that was incredibly special. It was also taking in, the culture of space and place, the whole native ideology. We went to pueblos, of course. It was about also taking in nature. And funnily enough, so in nature, just to let you know, I started seeing a lot of feminine forms. So, in White Sands National Park, where not only I had an outer body experience when the sunset was going down, and it was literally like Rothko painting in front of me, where I literally, for a split second, I don't know if it was a second, it was 20 seconds, I left my body and I came back. It was some other sort of form of happening. But I also saw woman in this beautiful space. And there's one image, as you know, with the rolling hills, where it almost looks like, the side of a woman lying down. And then the more serious side of things, of course, border towns at the Mexican border. We spent time with refugees. We went through the whole system with the local sheriff's office. We spent time with the legal system to try and see how the whole operation works. And we saw the humanity in that. And we realized that mediatically there's a lot of demonization of this whole process, whereas the reality is actually something very different, and it's very human and it's very beautiful. And it was so wonderful to be able to spend time with people discussing their personal lives and their personal stories. I have very strong memories of that. And then big ideas, big art. We went to Marfa. Of course, we went to, pay our respect to Judd. But at the same time, as you know very well, and you helped us, curate our photography for the book and for the show, there's not one really image that refers back to Judd. Judd is there. Judd is the god of Marfa. But I tended to focus on the outsider artist. There's a wonderful artist, Jim McGee, who I met all those years back when I was making Art Studio America. And I was very, very lucky enough to be able to see him again, because he sadly passed away 3 months after our visit. And that in itself, will forever be etched in my heart, in my soul, in my mind, to have had this opportunity to meet this man who, for his entire career, something like 50 years straight on, with his own 2 hands and 2 lovely Mexican workers who were by his side, built this incredible spiritual structure out in the Chihuahuan desert, in the middle of nowhere. A site where a lot of people have spread their ashes, have celebrated weddings, have celebrated funerals, just go there for spirituality purposes, and this universe that he created. And yet, no one in the regular art world, in the iconic, sort of canon of the art world that we operate in has really paid attention to his work. And I so hope that, he will even posthumously be recognized for the beautiful work that he did. But that's the kind of possibility and potential that those desert environments offer. And really, he deserves to be looked at. And that's the kind of character that I was interested in. I also met, by chance, we were walking through Marfa, Texas, and I met this old man. I had no idea who he was. And he was the principal printer to Donald Judd, and he still lives. And he was fantastic. So he took us into his printer, bureau, depot, studio, and all these little artifacts of the past and, the hand of Judd, signatures, pieces, things that he's kept from the past. And such a modest human being for really who he is and what he's seen. And then the nature, goes without saying, when you're going through Lake Powell in Utah, when you are going through the canyons, painting in nature, you are actually walking through painting created by this higher energy. And you're taken by it because it's so much bigger than you. You're just a dot, you're a speck. And then that's when you realize, actually, what are we worried about? Why do we keep worrying about everything? What are we doing here? I know it sounds a bit, cliche, but, and what are we compared to all this?
Do you think that's what draws or what drew so many artists there in the first place?
100%. The energy, the feeling, you're taken over as a photographer, the light, there's no question. I think you see it in my work, this light, this ever-changing light, whether it's from, dusk with the pinks and the roses to the very deep scarlets and purples at night, the very, very deep blue skies, the dotted clouds, the colors of sand and sky, this rusts and blue, which you find in our book, right? 100%, there's an energy. There's an energy that's only very specific to that place. And I've only ever felt that type of energy, funnily enough, in Peru, when I went to Machu Picchu. And there was something that took over me, and that it was a very similar thing. So I've never been too spiritual in my life until fairly recently, in the last sort of 5-6 years, I've kind of opened up myself a little bit more to that kind of thing. I'm a very rational person, so there's always been a bit of a clash between allowing myself versus going on just science-based, facts. But, at some stage of life, I think once you've had experience, once you've had a certain number of years of living and dealing with people, you've got to sort of, think that there is something else. There is, or maybe you need to, because you need hope.
There's something in these images that is raw and more loose, and they feel like they're grounded in maybe like a different kind of truth. So yeah. I wonder did you have to unlearn anything to shoot them?
I had to unlearn everything. I had to unlearn everything because it was everything that I had never done before. And I had to have not a dialogue with my colleague, who I learned a lot from, by the way, because this is something I observed him for the first 2 days in particular. I was very observant of his movements, of the way he was looking. I was learning from him because this is what he's done. So unlearn the way that I operate usually and go and learn from someone else. That's number one. But my biggest learning was to allow myself to have a dialogue with space, place, time, and nature. That powerful nature. If you take me out to the effing, forest, I may not have the same kind of approach to it. But when you're in that big plains, I remember these massive roads, going through hours and hours of roads and horizons where your eyes just, literally goes from 180 without a human in sight, an animal in sight, almost thinking like, actually, if something were to happen to us, nobody would even know. And frankly, nobody would even care. We'd forgotten water, by the way, because we're not like, we're urban people. We had no idea what we were doing I turned around at some stage and in the car, I said, by the way, Lexi, do we have water bottles? And he goes, oh no, I forgot. I'm like, great. So you have to, but then that's when you let go. You know, you have to let go. You have to let go of your normal references that are generally references that have to do with urban living and the pressures that go with urban living, where you don't have the phone calls, you don't have the bills, you don't have the pressures of life every day, and you're just letting yourself go with nature.
So then did this as a moment, when I look at the series as a whole, and then I think back to that first image I saw of this woman that you're looking up at, it's all the same to me. So like my relationship to your work, I still feel small, put in a position of awe, and put in a position that is like, look at how beautiful this is, like an urgent, come on.
In the same way that I want to put women on that pedestal, I wanted to put nature on that pedestal. And I wanted to put thought and ideas on that pedestal. It goes beyond the physicality of the nature. It goes into the spirituality and thought processes of space and place as well. Big ideas, you know, when you think that, you know, this man just came, you know, in the middle of nowhere and set up shop, you know, there was a reason why he did that. Why George O'Keeffe, speaking of Judd, the reason why George O'Keeffe went to where she went to set up shop, there's a reason why she did that. Is because all these people saw this place as almighty. It's their God. It's like their, you know, nature is God, like in that kind of sense, you know, God, you can define it in any other way. But, and they each became, in a way, a god and goddess of art, in a sense. But 100%, you cannot deny that in that process, space and place had something to do with it. So in the same way that I went on my stomach on the ground, shooting woman from below, I went on my stomach on the ground, shooting nature from below. And at the end of the day, for me, nature and woman, pretty much, I mean, she's creation and nature is creation. So that's kind of where it starts talking to each other.
If someone meets you on the street,
yeah,
and says, okay, why are you doing all this?
I'm doing it in a very selfish way. It's my Xanax. I will, touch wood, I hope, never need Xanax, because this is what I do. When I'm behind that camera and I have my finger on the click, that's my moment of truth. That's my moment of peace. That's my deconnection with all problems, weight of life. And that's why I do it. It's a very selfish process. And so it starts with me. And then I can only just hope that whatever is produced in the process is appreciated, enjoyed by others. But it really just starts with me. And I'm self-satisfying to start off with. And I also need to, by the way, do a bit of dialogue between heavy and light. So this project that we're working on, West, and the exhibition that goes with it, it's quite an intellectual story. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of big themes and big thematics that are involved in gaze, in, you know, collaboration, in the topics that are explored. And they're very beautiful pictures, but behind the beauty lies a lot of philosophy, a lot of thought, a lot of many cracks. In fact, one image that I have is a crack, right? It's that crack.
Just about to say that.
It was US 90, Texas, middle of nowhere. I had to get off. I saw this crack. And I said, Lexi, please stop the car 2 seconds. And I got off, and it was an entire crack that went from one side of the highway to the other. Not highway, the road, the route that we were on. And I just captured that because to me, that said a lot about the world, about the Great Divide, about the country I was, you know, photographing, about everything that's going on in our humanity. You know, it's this sad Great Divide that's taking place. And so there's a lot of symbolic thought processes that have gone into this as well. It's beyond the pretty pictures. But then I came back and, you know, I had to think and rethink, and moments keep playing in my head. And then I had to do some light photography because I need that as well. So, I went to Palm Beach and I did a whole series in Palm Beach early December, which is just fun and light and colorful. It's still around, it's still around positivity, but it's a total flip to this project. So again, it's a selfish process because I need to do that with myself to keep myself balanced, creatively, soulfully, intellectually. And then that light project can bounce me back into this project because we're going to have 2 years of this together.
Probably more, Maryam, probably more. But do you ever worry though that flip-flop will be a disservice, right?
No.
We know. No, you don't worry.
No, I tell you why. And this is something that I've discovered, and I very much thought about that in the beginning. And by the way, the criticism is out there, and I so welcome it. And I've had this question asked that don't you worry about going from serious to less serious? And my less serious is actually, it's not that it's less serious, but my less serious is about beauty, really. I need beauty in my life. I need beauty in my art, and I need to live with beauty myself. So whilst I'm incredibly cognizant of the need for very serious art and institutional settings, and I enjoy it, as you know, I live, breathe institutions, museums, and all that, and I need it to feed my soul and to make me think more than anything else. I also believe that, there's nothing wrong with beautiful. And I know it's a bit of a taboo world in the contemporary art world, but I like beauty. So I like photographing beautiful things, and so my less serious things, whether it's like a whole book on Capri that I did, which sort of engulfs 5 years worth of visits to Capri and just capturing the beauty of place and color and energy, or, any other type of series that I've done along those lines, I'm equally proud. Makes me happy.
I think it's so weird though. So I vividly remember in the early 2000s, someone's going to say, no, it wasn't then, but whatever, let's just go with it. A.O. Scott did an article in the New York Times, and the headline, and it was probably in like the Sunday magazine, the headline was "Beauty is Back."
Yeah.
And it was big and bold, and I was like, where'd it go?
Where'd it go?
Like, what's our problem with beauty? And the whole article was about that it was coming back. But I do think that the art world has this
it does.
hustle.
But even more so today in the world, in very uncertain world that we're living in. And, we all have children. I'm concerned about their future. The world is moving so fast, geopolitically, from also, AI, like all these things that are happening so fast. So you're younger than me, but my sort of growth has been slow. My kids and your kids' generation is going to be exponential, and the adaptation to change in itself, just the thought of that makes me very claustrophobic. And we're also living in a very uncertain world in terms of the politics that we're experiencing around us. So I need beauty. I need a cocoon. It's escapism. Call it whatever you want to call it. But I need this bubble where I can crawl into and just put on my visors and just enjoy that moment of creation, of beauty.
But I think you use it the way that, I can't believe I'm going to quote Socrates here, and these are not in my notes, I swear. Right, beauty is the bait. For you, and it's the bait for you and your soul, right? Yes. So you're out in nature and you see it, or you see the woman, or you see the cowboy, and that for you is you're like, okay, everything's fine.
Yes.
And so then you want to get
an anchor.
us.
It's an anchor. It anchors me.
Yeah.
It anchors me, and it also adds poetry. It's they go hand in hand. As you probably know, I love associating words with images. I've done that a lot, and I did an entire series actually where I worked with a poet. So I have done collaborations before with Paul, and it was a beautiful process. He was actually writing the poetry as I was photographing. So he was looking at the action and capturing the image that he thought I was capturing. And he wrote poems to go with each shot. And it was very nice. So whether it's working with a poet or writing my own words, and I do enjoy writing, I have to be inspired, but when I'm inspired, I can write. I think the two go hand in hand. And there's definitely a dialogue between beautiful words and beautiful ideas and beautiful visuals. And you can go beyond beautiful. Beautiful can be spiritual. Beautiful can just be a pause. It could just be forcing yourself to just be.
So I think it is just that beauty is the bait. And in that case, I'm going to ask you a question that I have asked a few artists, but not everyone. If you could own any artwork from the beginning, history of time,
right?
What would it be?
There's only one.
She says.
I would be willing to give up everything, just live in a white space, and just this painting. It's Empire de Lumière, Empire of Light by Magritte. There's been several iterations of it, but every time I go to Venice, to the Peggy Guggenheim, I spend hours just standing in front of this. And I was so lucky because my daughter actually had an internship there a couple of years ago, and it was during COVID, so not a lot of people were in Venice. And I really was able to spend one-on-one time with this beautiful painting. It's just, for me, it's everything to do with hope. You have the dotted clouds in the sky. It's at dusk, as you know. And it's just a little light in the forest that you just see the silhouette at dusk. And it's just a faint light coming from a home, I guess. And it's everything to do with hope for me and beauty.
On that note, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the interest, and so amazing working with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?